guys, thanks. It's Jackie M with Zona on our weekly broadcast, live streaming or webcasting via Periscope, doing Asian cooking with Thermomix. And today we're actually going to be doing something, two different versions of the same thing. So hopefully by the end of this, you're going to be totally confused because just talking through what we're going to do is confusing us a little bit now. But we're doing something called Otak-Otak, right? Zona's family hails from Penang, or her dad did. She was born in KL, whereas I came from down south. So there's that great north-south divide as far as Malaysian cooking is concerned. And basically, when we talk about otak-otak, and otak-otak, thanks for joining by the way. When we talk about otak-otak, otak-otak literally means brains, right? And also with otak-otak, it refers to a number of different, like not different, but similar types of snacks. And I know even Indonesian followers of mine, when I mention otak-otak, they'll go, oh, where's the peanut sauce? And both Zona and I, and we hail from, like I said, different parts of Malaysia with two different distinct versions of otak-otak. Neither of us have ever come across otak-otak that gets served with peanut sauce, but apparently that's how they do it in Indonesia. So that's quite unusual. But coming from Seremban, which is 40 miles south of Kuala Lumpur, my only exposure to otak-otak has been like the Malacca version, and also, hey, thanks for joining, and also the Singaporean version. And I'm just going to show you what they look like, right? Okay, I googled otak-otak, right? And most of them, ironically, so apparently the southern version dominates online. So, because if you look, all the pictures point to the southern version, which look like a banana, look like a coconut leaf wrapped fish cakes. Okay, they look like thin strips and they're grilled, and usually they're grilled on these hot open charcoal grills. Looks similar to satay grills, but usually a little bit shallower. Okay, so if ever you go to Malaysia or Singapore, you'll see them. And in fact, in Singapore, one time when I was there, I saw them in Singapore's version of 7-Eleven. So in Australia, when you go to 7-Eleven, you see meat pies and sausage rolls and that sort of stuff. You go to Singapore, you go to 7-Eleven, you see curry puffs and otak-otak. Yeah, I know, right? So that's the beauty of living in Asia. But now, Zona's version of otak-otak, just let me see if I can add.
Nyonya.
Yeah. Let's try otak-otak Nyonya. Okay, and see what we come up with. And
it's funny because both are similarly Nyonya. It's just the Penang one has actually taken the name Nyonya to it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've added Nyonya to it, and if you look at these pictures,
Very different.
Yeah, they look quite different. I'm just going to enlarge this on my Yoga 900. Okay, so you can see it's more of a custody steamed parcel, right? And in Penang, usually they steam them in these kind of like a pyramid shape parcels, whereas with otak-otak in the south, it's folded in flat into thin strips and then grilled. Now, having said that, and I mentioned this in one of my other broadcasts also, that in Malaysia, the grilled otak-otak is usually wrapped with coconut leaves, okay, which we can't get over here. Okay, so in the process of the evolution of my Malaysian recipe, stuff, I've had to kind of split the difference. So I'm going to do my version, which is more similar to the southern version. It's going to be grilled, or rather pan-fried, because I don't want to start a fire in this building. Whereas Zona is going to do the steamed version. Okay, there are slight variations in terms of how everything is handled, but we'll go around and we'll talk about it a little bit further. Okay, cool. Now, we've got some fish fillets over here. Zona bought some basa fish fillets. Now, basa fish fillets isn't something that we come across quite often in Malaysia, in fact.
Well, it's known, the sources of basa that we get is actually Vietnamese here in Sydney at least.
Right.
But in Malaysia, I think what we would use is mackerel or snapper.
Mackerel is very popular in Malaysia. Like we use things like something called, it's quite interesting because I worry a little bit about fish names. I think fish names are a little bit like Asian ingredient names, right? They're known by different names in different countries. But there's this particular fish fillet frozen that I came across at Asian grocery stores, and it was called featherback.
Oh.
Right, I've never heard of featherback in Australia, but it was imported from Vietnam. My mom looks at it and it's got Chinese writing on the label as well, and she said that's the fish we use in Malaysia for making fish pad.
It's probably
featherback.
Feather. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a tortoise leatherback.
Yeah, not quite. No.
We don't use tortoise.
Yeah. But okay, now what I do with my otak-otak is that I actually make a paste out of fish fillets, right? Whereas with the Penang version, from what I know, I don't even remember if I've ever eaten Otak-Otak in Penang, right? The Penang version, yeah, it looks like they use sliced fishes, sliced small fish fillets, right?
Cut out in chunks so you get whole pieces.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is first show you the technique for making your own fish paste at home. This is, now, Zona, I asked Zona to pick up some fish on the way here, and she brought me this frozen pack of like batter fillets, and so we've run it under cold running water for a few minutes. But the fact of the matter, if you're using a Thermomix and if you're using any kind of blender to blend your fish to make fish paste with that you can then use for other things, it actually helps that your fish is actually semi-frozen, okay? Because what happens is the blades spin so fast, and I don't mean this only for the Thermomix, but for any food processor.
Or any mincer.
Yeah, the blade spins so fast, it has a tendency to actually cook the whatever it is you're spinning,
so
okay?
The friction is actually what cooks it.
Yeah.
Well, I found as well with the Thermomix, with other types of meat, if you actually use room temperature meat, instead of chopping or mincing it up, it actually spins with the blade, so you're actually letting it go for a merry-go-round.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so I'll put a couple of chunks of fish in here, and usually if you're making this particular technique of making fish, I just want to add a couple of things to this. This particular technique of making fish fillets, like I said, usually in Malaysia we use featherback, whatever it's called over here, and we use mackerel. Okay, mackerel is quite popular, but mackerel costs an arm and a leg over here in Australia. But what I would do is I would add some salt to this, right? And some pepper. Let's see if I can.
Would you use any other flavors besides salt, like soy, which is also salty?
No, because it will change the soy. Soy has a different nuance to the saltiness, so it will affect the flavor. What you want when you're making fish paste is to keep it as flavor neutral as possible. And what you want also is something to hold it together. And I don't actually, to be honest, usually use batter to make my fish paste with. For this particular recipe, for Otak-Otak, it doesn't matter so much because it's going to get grilled and whatever. But if you're making something a little bit more nuanced, like fish bowls and whatever, you might want to actually revert to using mackerel, which is a very high quality fish. And in fact, in Australia, when we first came to Australia and started making our own fish paste, right, and we usually predominantly use it for, tapioca starch. Tapioca starch in here. Okay. Now, you want the way you pick out the kind of fish that's suitable for making fish paste with is you want something that's quite starchy. That's why mackerel actually works quite well. But like I said, mackerel costs an arm and a leg over here. When we first came to Australia, we used to use what's called redfish fillets. Okay, redfish fillets, they're from redfish, apparently. And they used to be quite cheap at Asian grocery stores, about $6 a kilo. Nowadays, they're very seasonal, very hard to get, and they can cost like $15 a kilo. Okay, so I kind of took it off my menu because of that.
Well, if you're thinking about what's more sustainable for you, because I know we've got viewers here from all around the world, look at the type of fish that's
Essentially, you want something that has that little bit of a starchiness in the flesh, right? There isn't that much in the batter, but also what you want to do is usually you would add some water. So we've got a bit of water. We'll see how we go because this batter is frozen. It may have some some water trapped in it, so we'll gauge it once we've spun it a little bit. But I've also added some tapioca starch, and that tapioca starch essentially helps hold everything together. Okay, let's just give this a shot. Okay, so it has been like 5 seconds. Let's see how it looks. Like I said, because we are adding a whole bunch of other stuff to this, it doesn't need to be that perfect, right? And you can tell from this that we didn't actually need to add any kind of any water.
It's quite
okay, so this is quite soft. If I were using it to make yong tau fu or stuffed vegetables, I might need to add a bit more starch to this, okay? And likewise, if I were making fish balls, I might need to add a bit more starch. And usually when you're making fish paste, like I said, depending on what you're using it for, they usually suggest that you bounce the meat, right? You keep bouncing it to make it bouncy, okay? Because the Chinese are big on the bounce with your fish. If ever you Google this movie called God of Cookery by Stephen Chow, and there's one of the, basically it's about this guy, Stephen Chow, who was like celebrity chef who kind of like got cheated, and then he tried to build himself up from poverty. And the way he did it, second time around, from being a celebrity chef, he tried to build up his career by going to street food, Hong Kong street food, right? And he found this woman who was a total ace with making beef balls, right? And the whole idea with the beef balls was like they invented this new dish where the beef balls, when you bite into them, they're so incredibly bouncy, and also the inside has kind of like a broth sort of thing, so they kind of explode in your mouth, you know. So there's this really funny segment in there. It shows people going completely orgasmically ecstatic when they bite into like the bouncy beef balls. But it's all about how bouncy it is, and you'll see like segments where they throw the beef ball and see how bouncy it is and think that's it, you know, we're going to conquer the world with bouncy beef balls. But the Chinese essentially are very obsessed to almost, you know, to almost a point of ridicule about like how bouncy their fish paste is, okay? Now, like I said, look up online and people will say, oh, use this, lift this up and keep bouncing it, and the idea is you get out all the air and makes them like really kind of compact. That's how you create the bounce. But usually I don't actually find it's necessary.
No, not for the Otak-Otak. Don't bounce your fish.
Yeah, so it's not that subtle. Okay, so that's your fish paste, and she's just going to chop that up. And the other thing I want to mention, if you followed last week's session where we made laksa, we made a laksa paste, okay? And this is the leftover of the laksa paste. Now, I don't know if you watched closely enough, but when we made the laksa paste, I didn't actually put the dried shrimp in here in the paste because I said I already had the shrimp already minced up. So when we process all the other spices, it's got galangal, turmeric, lemongrass, candlenut, chili, onion.
Two types of chili, so we use fresh chili and dried chilies.
Yeah, okay. So it's got all those ingredients, and this is exactly the kind of recipe you want for the Penang version of
the Otak-Otak.
Okay, so she's just going to use this, but there's one more step in between we're going to talk about. But in the meantime, my particular version, like I said, we're going to try and confuse the hell out of you. I'm going to make, basically, I'm going to get the process in motion to make my sambal belacan, okay? Sambal belacan is a Malaysian shrimp paste sambal, okay? And so if you're taking notes, just make a mental note of how I make sambal belacan. I've got the recipe online, but I'm going to make a shortcut version of this. I'm using some fresh chilies over here. I'm not measuring anything, but of course, you know, like I said, if you want to follow the recipe, it'll be online. Just cutting this out a little bit. Sambal belacan is basically a condiment that you use as a, you know, to serve your noodles, your rice dishes, and all that. It's very, very versatile. And I always have like a jar in my fridge. Okay, so I'm just going to get started. Actually, every time I say I always have to couch it in a lot of like you know, caveats. Okay, when I say sambal belacan, there are actually two main versions of sambal belacan. One's the sambal belacan that's fresh, but we're not making that. We're making sambal belacan that's fried, okay, what we call sambal belacan tumis. And the tumis version has a few more things that goes into it. If you're making fresh sambal belacan, it'll be just chilies, belacan that's been toasted, and also you know, some lemon juice and a little bit of sugar just to balance out the flavor. And that's used in some dishes, okay? And so usually a bit of salt as well, again, just to adjust the flavors a little bit. Now, my sambal belacan tumis has chili. Okay, I'm being lazy here, I should have closed that off, but let's see how it looks. So I've done this for about 5 seconds total. This is just chilies, okay? And I got to point out as well, the chilies I'm using here are actually what's called banana chilies at my local grocery store. Okay, this is what it looks like. And usually if you've got fresh onion, you can use fresh onion, but we're in a hurry today. So I'm going to use my cooking hack. If you've been following me on the non-Thermomix broadcast and that sort of stuff, you'll know that I use fried shallots quite a lot in my cooking hacks, okay? So this is what it looks like. Something you can pick up quite easily at Asian grocery stores and even at IKEA, because apparently Swedes like fried shallots. Yeah.
There you go.
But make sure you get the ones, if you look at the ingredients list, make sure you get the ones that don't actually contain flour in them, because some of them actually mention that they contain flour in them, okay? Because the flour is going to create starchiness in whatever it is you're cooking. But essentially what it does to me, as far as, you know, it being a hack, is that it saves me having to peel onions and then fry them until they're brown like this, okay? So I've got that. And the other thing I want to add in is some chicken stock granules, okay? And this is again my hack. I know a lot of people are a little bit averse to using chicken stock granules. This particular version actually does contain MSG, but you don't have to get one that does. You can get other ones that are a little bit more, I guess, you know, closer to your preferences. And the way I would describe chicken stock granules is that it's kind of like the Malaysian version of chicken stock cubes, okay? I'm just putting a bit of sugar in this. And the other thing I want to add is sugar, belacan. Where did I put my belacan powder?
Use curry powder.
There you go. No, I won't put that in there yet because I want to show them. Okay. Now, this is belacan, and if you followed any of our past broadcasts, this is belacan in powder form. Belacan is what is essentially is shrimp paste, not to be confused with dried shrimp. Okay, they're different things. I did have someone ask me the other day whether
What's the difference?
they actually bought dried shrimp instead of belacan because they couldn't find belacan. So I had to tell them, look, you know.
I think this is more fermented as well, compared to the shrimp, where that's just dried fresh shrimp. Fresh shrimp dried into it. Yeah.
So I'm just going to mix this up.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just mixing because everything's already minced. Yeah. Okay. Now, what I would usually do if I were making sambal belacan is that I would add oil to this and then fry it up in my Thermomix, and that will take probably about 20 minutes or so, depending on how you want, you know, the final outcome to look. But for this particular exercise, right, because we're using it in my otak-otak, you don't have to fry it up because it's going to get grilled up anyway. Okay, so let's just put a bit in here.
Yep.
Okay, that should be enough. I don't want to go too crazy with the chili.
Spicy.
Right. Now, if you look online, I already have my otak-otak recipe on a lot of websites, right? But they don't mention using sambal belacan. The reason why we're doing this is so I can show you, if ever you do felt inclined to make your own sambal belacan, this is how you would make it. And you would make it, and then you can keep it in the fridge, fried up with a nice layer of oil, like I do. And then, you know, next time you feel like making like a side dish like otak-otak, you can just whip out the sambal belacan and then just add it to your fish paste mix. And yeah.
So it's really versatile. I love that with Malaysian cooking, a little bit of that base that's a condiment can become a full meal, or even just another side dish that you can serve up.
Yeah. The one thing you want to add to this is these are called kaffir lime leaves. I'll just hold this up. I've got these sitting in my freezer. You can find them at Asian grocery stores, Southeast Asian grocery stores, usually Vietnamese run ones. Okay, kaffir lime leaves. And the way you can tell them, you can't tell because it's all broken up. But usually they're also known as double lime leaf, double leaf, something
Double
like
leaf lime.
yeah, something like that. But essentially, what they look like, you know, the leaves look like they've got a double tier to them. Okay. And what you want to do with these kaffir lime leaves, like I said, these are, you can buy them fresh at Asian grocery stores. You can also buy them dried, okay? But fresh is always best with this particular thing. And you want to just thinly slice this. And by the way, I'm just going to thank Sheldon and Hammond for sending me this beautiful cleaver. It's the best knife I've ever used.
I'm a bit quiet today because of that.
Yeah. And one thing about the southern version of otak-otak is that it actually kind of tastes a little bit curryish, okay? So what we're going to do is add some curry powder to this, and I'm using this thing called fish curry powder. just have a look at your Asian grocery store next time you go shopping for curry powders. Look for ones from Malaysia. And I don't think I've ever gone wrong with any Malaysian brand of curry powder. And you're going to find with the Malaysian brands that they get a little bit nuanced in terms of their selection. You can get meat curry powder, fish curry powder, rendang curry powder, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, but they, they all have essentially the same set of ingredients in varying amounts. Some have more.
The ratio.
Yeah.
Okay.
And usually the fish curry powder tends to be more yellow because it's got more turmeric in it. Okay.
So let's say someone can't actually find this. Would you recommend that it's alright to use?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Any other type of curry powder should be fine. Yeah. Even non-Malaysian ones. For the longest time, I have to admit, I was actually using ayam curry powder, which again, for the longest time, I thought it was Malaysian, but actually Singaporean. Yeah. And growing up in
Not
Malaysia.
that we have anything against Singapore.
No. I mean, and one way to do is add egg into this, okay? And you want some coconut milk.
Yep.
Okay, I've got some coconut cream here. So adding this in, and we're gonna mix this up.
Stir it up right in front of you.
Yeah, okay, so this is how it's looking now. I might actually throw in a bit more. This is quite sloppy at the moment. I might add a little bit more fried shallots in here just to kind of help hold it together a little bit more. And also, ideally, you would want to actually refrigerate it a little bit to help everything firm up a bit.
So you want a thick paste because you're going to form it up into little strips. It doesn't need to be perfect shapes, but because you'll be folding it in the leaf, you don't want it to run everywhere. So it needs to hold its own. I guess you could describe it as a very soft Play-Doh. Or
kind of like, it's not too bad like that, right? Okay, so this is about right. And usually, I have to admit, usually mine looks a little bit more yellow than that. It doesn't matter, it's just an aesthetic thing. And also, like I said, usually I don't actually whip out sambal belacan and put it in. I usually make it from scratch, which is basically a bit of belacan powder, a bit of chicken stock granules, some eggs, some coconut cream, a bit of sugar. Okay, so I'm just going to boost the flavor a little bit, just for the heck of it. Okay.
What I found very interesting with even doing research for Otak-Otak was when the Indonesian version that you were talking about, it actually looks very white. So they don't put a lot of spices to it, which kind of reinforces how Malaysia is very influenced from the Indian culture, the Malay local culture, and then the Chinese. But of course, the Indian influence is the one that's more flavoursome, and to see this colour bright with, I mean, she uses curry powder. I don't think the Indonesians do that. So it might be more fresh.
Maybe, yeah. I don't really know a lot about Indonesian cooking, to be honest. Pretty much every time I post something online, I get someone from Indonesia say, Laksa originated from Indonesia. Otak originated from Indonesia. And so what's your point, But Indonesians seem to have this complex about trying to claim everything as their own. I think they've got a big chip on their shoulder about Malaysia and how...
Well, they technically do have a lot of common history with Malaysia, so I personally wouldn't dispute that because they've got very rich history. But
they tend to forget. What I contend with them is that first of all, a lot of Malaysians actually originated from Indonesia. Okay, my home state of Negeri Sembilan actually was founded by Indonesian migrants to Malaysia. So the whole population base is just completely a big, mix of everything. But having said that, there is no such thing as an Indonesian race, okay? Indonesia is made up of a whole bunch of different ethnicities as well. The Balinese are very distinctly different from the Javanese, from the Sumatrans, from,
Sulawesi,
Borneo, they're all different, okay? So where do you then draw the line? Okay, that's what I contend.
So what Jackie's doing now is actually cutting out the banana leaves into shapes. So she wants to make it into a little rectangle so that she can put the paste in the middle and then fold it up. You want to make sure that it's actually sealed properly so that the paste doesn't leak over when it's grilling or even cooking. Have you ever baked this otak-otak before instead of
No, I have tried steaming it and I've tried grilling it essentially. Okay, so this is about the size of a banana leaf I would cut, and usually they would suggest, sometimes depending on the batch of banana leaves you use, sometimes they can be quite tough and hard to manipulate. Okay, if that's the case, I've had usually they suggest kind of like boiling it in some water, or holding it over an open flame to soften it. But usually, because I produce so much for my business, or did anyway, we would just throw a stack of this in the microwave for a minute, okay, just to soften it. It does take away the appearance a little. It does detract from the appearance a little bit, because when you microwave, usually it's a little bit patchy. Okay, but it does help soften enough of the surface area for you to be able to fold it. But this particular one, they're pretty okay, so we're going to use them straight, okay? Now, I'll get Zona started on this while I make this, and really, also I just need to mention, because a lot of people don't realize, okay, you find with a banana leaf, there's a dull side, the inside, and there's the shiny side, okay? And you always use the dull side that's where the food goes on, okay? So
I made the mistake just now. So with the Nyonya version, I'm not going to be expert at folding it into a little triangle. I wasn't trained to do that way. But what my dad gave me as a shortcut was
sure.
to actually layer your plate. So what I've done is I've actually lined a little bowl that's going to fit into the varoma, the steamer for the Thermomix. And then pour the mixture in here that's actually going to get steamed. So look, if you're from a country where banana leaves are not native, and if you can find it, it's, you might find it's too expensive, get even a small piece. It's also just there to give a lot more fragrance and appearance to it. And just line it on a little, maybe a souffle style bowl, a little ramekin. You don't have to make a large dish. You can make them into little ones as well. Or you can do one serving like that, and then everyone can just take a little bit for their serves. Right, so this was my little error. Jackie pointed it out that I've used the wrong side, so I had to do it again.
She's a city girl. You'd be amazed. Look,
I'm learning
generally, anyone who has the opportunity to emigrate, right? Usually from the same group of people who never had to live had to lift a
Street food was cheap. Street food's cheap. It's only when you start missing it you want to learn how to make it.
That's why I'm always a little bit cynical about food blogs online. They invariably, especially if they're written by like transplanted Malaysians overseas, it's like they know probably about as much as you do. They've just taken the trouble to kind of like Google online how do you make otak-otak, and they've kind of like taken a nice picture of it. But invariably, a lot of them don't speak from their own personal experience actually making it back home in Malaysia. Okay. I'm not saying categorically across the board, but that's the kind of
general experience,
cynicism I take to when I read to blogs. And in fact, usually the uglier looking the blog, the more credit to me it has.
You judge it by its cover.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for the Nyonya Otak-Otak, as Jackie mentioned, we're actually using the base paste, or what the Nyonyas call the rumpa or rumpa, depending on which generation you're from. And just to reiterate, it's got onions, it's got chilies, dry chilies, fresh chilies, candle nuts, lemongrass, onions. So you can use, what we did was we used just the normal brown onions. Traditionally it's the shallots, but whatever is closest to you, it's just to add that flavor to it. And I'm going to use probably about this much into here. What I'm going to do is make the paste I'll add a bit more. I like mine with a bit more flavor. And this is something that I actually learnt from my dad. So I got him to actually show me a couple of his favorite Penang dishes. And he showed me the otak-otak, and then I realized that the base paste of the otak-otak was similar to the Siamese laksa, or even the curry laksa almost.
Okay. I just gotta mention, if you've got split bits on your banana leaves, don't worry too much about it. You can actually kind of use a double layer. So because I'm so cheap, right? What I usually do would be like save all the odds and ends, and then just kind of like use them to cover the split bits over here. Okay.
So I've put the paste in, I've put a bit of coconut milk. I'm going to break 2 eggs. It's a bit like a custard, and if you look at the ingredients, it's got coconut milk and eggs, and then the paste just flavors it up. So 1 egg's in there. another egg being cooked up.
So you're going to find if you were making her particular version, not doing the souffle thing with hers, you would, I'll just show you quickly. The banana leaves will be cut different, okay? They'll be cut more of a square shape.
So I'm going to take the plunge and use a bit of Jackie's
chicken stock granules.
Chicken stock granules, her secret ingredient, just to give it a bit more flavour. So it's to taste and a bit of sugar.
Okay, so if you were using, if you were making the steamed version, the Penang version, what you would do is fold up the two sides. You're going to cut it more like a square, and then you would fold it up like this, right? And then kind of like turn it into like a bit of a boat. It's a little bit hard to make because it's a bit crunchy. That's why I prefer making the southern version where you just kind of like fold it on both sides.
And yeah, so I'm just going to mix it up.
And if you go to the more rural places in Johor down south and Malacca even, you might find when you go eat out at a Malay eatery, right? What they, you know how sometimes, say for instance, Chinese restaurants, they'll have peanuts for you and that sort of stuff. What you might get at a Malay eatery, especially the outdoor eateries, as soon as you sit down, even before you start ordering, they'll plonk a bucket of otak-otak, like these things, right, in the middle of the table. And what they then, you know, that's for you to snack on while you're ordering. And at the end, of course, they charge you for it. They count how many pieces of leaves you use up, and that's how they work out how much to add to your bill. Okay, so that's something to look out for next time you travel to Malaysia.
So this is what the paste, the sauce looks like. It's just a very liquidy paste, and it's the eggs that once it's steamed, it's going to solidify. So you can see now that it's actually very different from what Jackie's doing with the grill.
So this is what I've got here so far. Okay, like I said, down south usually they would actually use coconut leaves for this, and I'm just using banana leaves and folding them similar shape, but the coconut leaf ones will be a lot thinner and will have a lot less filling just because they're very, very, you know, they don't fit much in sort of thing. So I kind of like pad mine out and make them into a little bit of a cone shape in the middle, and for appearance sake, I kind of generally try and leave a little slit in the middle with the two ends meet, just so you can see what's inside, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start grilling this, pan frying it, okay?
So while Jackie's doing that, I actually would take the fish pieces and cut them up. So it's actually, I've got some of the little pieces here, so some of them I don't actually need to cut up. But before that, instead of actually mixing it up into a paste, just like the grilled version, I want to talk about these beautiful leaves here. These are called, I'll bring it up, sorry. These are what the Malaysians call daun kaduk. They are actually a vine type of leaf, or known in English as the wild pepper leaf. And they're actually going to add a bit more flavour into the Laksa, the Penang Otak-Otak. And all you need to do is actually just add one to the base of your Otak-Otak container, right, the bowl. You can add the fish pieces onto the serving, and it doesn't need to look like it's extremely presentable. It's basically when it steams, all the liquids at the top will just slowly harden up and solidify. Yep. So I'm going to take these pieces and cut them up.
Okay, so what I've done here, I've stuck these otak-otak into a Scanpan, just crowded it over, and I usually like to keep the lid on it while I'm cooking, just to help speed up the cooking process. Otherwise, you might find that you have to play around with like making sure your banana leaves don't burn before the contents are cooked through properly. And usually, I would suggest just kind of like cooking this. Granted, usually I cook it on the barbecue, and you know we don't always have the luxury of being able to lid this. But yeah, on the barbecue, I would tell my staff to cook it for about 8 minutes on one side, drizzle some oil over the top, flip them over and then cook them for another 5 minutes or so. Okay, so hopefully this works.
So I've just added the fish just like that, and then I'm going to pour this over. And I know it's going to leak through the leaf. So the other tip that my dad taught me was, instead of having it leak, if you're not using a small container with the banana leaf, you can also put alfoil, and then it'll let it steam just around the fish just like that. So what we'll do now is, I actually need to get a bowl of water. And
Yep. Okay, cool. You okay?
Yep.
So this will be interesting. I think this will be my first time trying Penang Otak-Otak because I've never tried it, I don't think. I have actually tried to steam my Otak-Otak, and that was only because I didn't have a barbecue at this particular event I was doing, and it didn't turn out so well, but it was partly because I was wrapping them in foil as well, but the foil was just sticking to the fish. So the sort of things the mistakes you make running your own Malaysian food business over the course of 20 plus years. 15 of it full time, I could write volumes about it. So you should, and what I usually tell my staff is that, because they always ask me, how do you know when it's done, right? And I usually tell them, when you're cooking it, and we'll come to this at a later stage, you'll find, because at the moment, I don't know how well you can hear this from over there, if I press this down, okay, it sizzles quite a bit, right? Because there's still a high water content in it. And what you want to do is cook it to the point where when you press it down, you feel the bounciness, okay? You don't want it to be rock solid because you've overcooked it. You want the bounciness, but it doesn't sizzle that, the way it does at the moment, okay? So I'm just gonna, this is just on like low to medium heat at the moment. And you can just smell the banana leaf aroma just permeating the whole apartment now.
So what I'm doing to prepare the Thermomix to do the steaming, I think if you watched our previous episodes, we've actually been doing quite a bit of steaming. I think the chikui and the pao. So there's a shortcut with the Thermomix. When you use boiled water off your water kettle, you can actually start the Thermomix temperature to a certain level, and then it'll just continue cooking. So right now it's at 60 degrees. So it can actually continue cooking the water up to a higher temperature. And you want the highest temperature at Varoma, which is the Thermomix special steaming temperature, and that will actually continue to create steam hot enough to cook what you've got up here. Alright, so we're going to do that. Set it to Varoma, and we'll be cooking it. Let's try for 10 minutes and set the blade to 2.5. So the blade will also act to activate the steam from the liquids that it's cooking on the inside, and it'll actually steam up there. So I don't have anything cooking in here, it's just hot water. But if you wanted to use your Thermomix and maximize it to cook other things, you can actually even make a soup. So serve up a soup with a bit of vegetables or a bit of meat or chicken, and then serve the otak-otak on the side as well. So you've got seafood, you've got maybe some vegetables, and then have rice. So you can even cook rice in the Thermomix with a little bit of the steamer here. You can cook up to 400 grams of rice, and it can sit in there, and the water that you can also use as soup can be made. So you've actually got 3 different dishes, but just for today, we'll be doing the otak-otak. Cool.
So this is coming along quite nicely, and I'm going to flip them now.
Because I've actually got extra fish, I'm actually going to make another otak-otak on the side. So we've got 2 servings. Anybody around Sydney? I think we've got plenty of food.
Yeah. We're selling tickets at the door. So I'll just flip them over. I'm just going to turn this down a little bit, because the Scanpan does actually conduct heat really well.
Oh, I can smell it. It's really good.
Okay, and I've just done it in reverse. Okay, I should have drizzled the oil and then flipped it, because the idea is the oil will help coat that open slit a little bit, so that when you flip it and cook it, it doesn't stick to your pan. Not that it will, because I'm using a Scanpan here, but yeah, generally if you're cooking on a barbecue, the part of the idea about drizzling some oil over it before you flip it is to kind of like help make sure it doesn't it doesn't burn. See, that's the whole point of all these events, you see, so that you can actually learn to cook this yourself, and you know, even open a Malaysian restaurant if you want to.
Does anyone have any questions for us? I know it's a bit more interactive and you don't get to smell or anything like that, but if we've gone too fast, just type in a comments there.
That's right. And the other thing I want to mention, if you can't be bothered like making your own fish paste from scratch, you can actually, if you go to Asian grocery stores, you can actually buy pre-made fish paste, usually in the freezer section.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to show you here is just another presentation version that I've actually done. So it's just in a little bowl with the banana leaf just like that. It doesn't need to be folded or shaped into a special like triangle shape or rectangle box. And then I'm just going to pour the mixture over it. Let's see if there's a question. Yeah. Replay.
Yeah. The danger in my not paying attention to the comments is that I don't know if people are abusing me. And that actually, you know, my 30-day, 30 Asian ingredient broadcast, the very first broadcast I did, within the first 10 seconds of me going on air, someone said something really obscene in their comment. And it was just as well, I guess, you know, if you followed me through my Periscope experiment, which occurred like a month and a day ago, started a month and a day ago, you would know that my 30 days, 30 Asian ingredients broadcast, which wrapped up yesterday, evolved quite significantly over the course of 30 days. It started out with me just kind of like being right up close and talking to you guys and just holding up ingredients, okay, and just talking about like how you use it and that sort of stuff. And then at some point it occurred to me, look, I'm not really, I do talk a lot, but I'm more comfortable cooking, okay, so I kind of figured it kind of makes sense if people are going to tune in and listen to a talking head for me to actually do some cooking. But it's just as well, on my very first broadcast, I was right up the front when someone said something obscene, so I could block them right away.
Always the way with people on Twitter being silly. Yeah. I guess everyone likes to hide behind anonymity to some degree, and if you abuse it, it is a bit unfortunate. Yeah.
Okay. So this is
it's actually expanded.
Yeah, that's right. So this is pretty much done. I'm going to give this another minute or so. The it's quite moussey, this particular version, and that's what you want to do, is strike a balance between, like, you know, having it nice and soft without having it disintegrate when you hold it up. Okay. Usually, having said that, the southern version tends to be a little bit more solid. The Penang version tends to be more moussey.
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes you'll find on Malaysian restaurant menus that it gets variously described as a fish cake, grilled fish paste, or fish mousse even. Okay, but they all refer to otak-otak. I mean, I know, because like I said, you know, I ran a bootstrap restaurant for the longest time. It's like, you know, when you don't have consultants and all that on board, you have to write your own freaking menu and write your menu descriptions. So you say, okay, what do I call this? A fish cake? People think Thai fish cakes. And actually, to be fair to the Thais, I think this is actually influenced by Thai cooking, right?
So this particular otak-otak does have a lot of overlap with the Thai or even Vietnamese. Like, look, this particular daun kado, I found it at a local Vietnamese grocer. When my dad came to visit to Sydney about 2 years ago almost, we were looking high and low for this because he wanted to show me this this particular dish. And I thought, you know, what are the odds? I have seen it at a local Indo-Chinese restaurant, so I knew somebody had it here. So I've been searching for this, and I found it only just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. I always tell people, if in doubt, go visit a Vietnamese grocery store, because the Vietnamese, you know, community seems to like to do a lot of their cooking from scratch, sort of thing, and they love their fresh herbs. So that's my otak-otak. I just want to, because the light's not that great here. I want to hold it up. Okay. Otak-otak. I've got asbestos hands, as you can tell. Okay, so that's my otak-otak. And like I said, if you Google otak-otak, just let me go back here a little bit. If you Google otak-otak, okay, this here, if you can see it, this is actually my otak-otak picture, okay? That's what it looks like. Ote-ote. Maybe, yeah, ote-ote.
Okay. Brilliant. So what's happening over here now is it's just still steaming, so it's got another 2-3 minutes to go.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll end the broadcast before this finishes, but you'll definitely see the pictures.
Okay,
we'll be
sure.
posting it. So follow Jackie.
Mm.
Yeah, we talked about the Laksa paste. You can find it on Jackie's YouTube channel, Jackie M Sydney. You
Yep.
can find it there. Watch that video, or we'll post up the recipes as well at some point too.
Otak is O-T-A-K. Sorry, otak. It does sometimes get spelled otak, but yeah, O-T-A-K is the most common. And otak in Malay actually means brain as well. No, you say hello. Look, say hello. Say hello. Hey. That's the one, otak-otak. There you go. No, say hello. Say hello. Look, say hello. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Is there anything else you want to add to this? Or okay. There you go, guys. And otak-otak, don't forget, like, we're going to be posting the photos on Instagram, on my social media pages, and all that. And also, don't forget the sambal that I made earlier. If you fried it up with some oil, you're going to get sambal belacan that you can also keep in the fridge and use it for other recipes or eat it with your noodles and all that sort of stuff. Thanks, guys, again for joining us, and we had fun.
Thank you.
And we'll catch up with you next week.
See ya.
I'll see you later. Ciao.